launch, go to squarespace.com/infographics to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
The date is 1944.
What happens when you finally kick the bucket, so to speak? Despite our mostly science-grounded views on death these days, it seems many of us believe in life after it.
No doubt you've all had the conversation with your friends about what you'd do if you won the lottery, or how much you'd give away to family and friends. How many problems might that cause? Or would you just spend and live a life of selfish luxury? According to CNN Money, the biggest lottery win ever was $1.586 billion, but it was divided between 3 people. A year later, in 2017, one woman scooped $758.7 million, and she decided to take the lump sum of $480.5 million. If you don't know, you can take your win divided over a number of years or all at once. Sounds great, but tell us what you think about that after this episode of The Infographic Show, when winning the lottery was a horrible curse. You may have already seen the documentaries in which lottery winners find themselves surrounded by cunning relatives and friends suddenly emerging from the past, all wanting a piece of the pie. You'll know how it can tear families apart, which often sounds like a tale of biblical greed. These are sad stories for sure. The last one might even bring a tear to your eye. 10. Return of the Killer Lover. Aged 42, Doris Murray might have thought she was the luckiest woman alive when she picked up $5 million after winning the Georgia lottery in 2007. It said her plan was to start a trust fund for her grandchildren. But Murray only got to live with her winnings 1 year as her ex-boyfriend came back on the scene begging. She wasn't interested in getting back with him or sharing cash with him, and so he stabbed her to death. He was arrested soon after, a lose-lose situation which we see is often the case with lottery greed. 9. A murderer in the family. A guy called Jeffrey Dampier had a similar fate, except this time it was family with blood on their hands. 39-year-old Dampier was over the moon when he won $20 million in 1996, and it's reported that he wasn't stingy either, treating family and friends with his cash. His sister-in-law and her boyfriend got the idea to take Dampier's winnings, and together they kidnapped him and then shot him in the head. The pair were soon arrested. Dampier's widow was later asked what winning the lottery had done for her husband. "I think it's a curse," she replied. 8. Don't trust anyone. In 2009, a man with a great name, Abraham Shakespeare, won $30 million in the Florida lottery when he was 42 years old. The former laborer didn't spend big at first, buying just a Nissan Altima and a Rolex watch. According to reports, he was constantly harassed by people who wanted some of his cash. He once told his brother, "I'd have been better off broke. I thought all these people were my friends, but then I realized all they want is just money." And it got worse. He went missing and was later found buried under someone's backyard. The killer was a woman he befriended who had told him she'd help him with his too much money problems. Her name was Dorsey D.D. Moore, and she's currently serving a long prison sentence for first-degree murder. 7. Drinking to the grave. It's happened numerous times when winners have been murdered for their money. All the reports of this happening were in the USA, but self-destruction, well, that's universal. Take the case of Brit Keith Gow, who won £9 million, about $12 million at today's rates, in 2005. Gow got straight down to the business of spending, betting big on soccer, horse racing, and apparently drinking himself to oblivion. He wasn't the brightest of lucky people and got scammed out close to $1 million after giving it to some shady guy to invest. He not only ended up selling everything he bought, including racehorses, a top-of-the-line BMW, his executive box at Aston Villa Football Club, and a large country villa, but he got into money troubles. He died of a heart attack, and financial problems and booze were to blame. His friends said the lottery virtually killed him. Winning the money was the worst thing that happened to him. "It's very sad," he told one friend. 6. Taking your own life. Then there's the story of Billy Bob Harrell, who won $31 million in the Texan lottery in 1997. He was followed around like many others by people with their hands out looking for some of his winnings. He didn't hide the fact that he was rich though. It got so much for the poor guy that he moved and changed his phone number. He also made some terrible financial decisions, and things got worse when he got divorced. It seems it all got too much, and 2 years after he won, still with money in the bank, he put a gun to his own head. Prior to taking his own life, he said, "Winning the lottery is the worst thing that ever happened to me." 5. Losing everything you need. Another case was the curse of Jack Whitaker, a West Virginian who won a staggering $315 million in 2002. He wasn't too careful with his cash, having almost $500,000 stolen from his car where he kept a money-loaded suitcase. He later had another $200,000 stolen in a similar way. Then, he was hit by grief after losing his granddaughter to a drug overdose. And then her mother, his daughter, died 2 years later from a drug overdose. They'd both been spending his fortune for him. "My granddaughter is dead because of the money. She was the shining star of my life, and she was what it was all about for me," he told the press. Incredibly, years later, he said he had nothing left and was a daughter and a granddaughter down. "I wish that we tore the ticket up," he said in an interview. 4. Too much, too young. Over in Scotland, a wee lad of 17 called Stuart Donnelly won the lottery in 1997. Not a good year for lottery winners, it seems, and talked about the pressure of being rich. He once told the newspaper that he was scared to leave the house. "It was very hard to deal with all the attention I got. I even had people camping outside my house. It put a huge strain on me and my family." He was found dead in his luxury home when he was 29. It's thought he died of natural causes, but the press speculates the lottery win played a part in his demise. 3. Back to the trailer park. Here's another story of rags to riches and back to rags. Evelyn Basor won $3.9 million back in 1985, but she had a taste for gambling. In 2000, she was back in a trailer park, saying she'd gambled all her money away. "I won the American dream, but I lost it too. It was a very hard fall. It's called rock bottom," she said. 2. Thug life. Back in the UK, there's a man by the name Michael Carroll, called a lottery lout by the press, which kinda means lottery thug. He even called himself King of Chavs. What is a chav? That's a long story, but we guess you could say a chav is a young hoodlum, but more of a white trash type of hoodlum. Anyway, this young delinquent won a massive £9.7 million in the UK lottery in 2002. At the time of his win, when he was just 19, he was working as a binman or trash collector and was still wearing an electronic tag so the cops could keep an eye on him. Winning didn't stop him from getting in trouble with the police. 10 years later, and all the money was gone on what he said was tons of drugs, lots of gambling, and thousands of prostitutes. We're not sure how he or his poor lungs and brain managed it, but he said he had a $2,300 a day crack cocaine habit. What did he have to say about his rise and fall? The party has ended, and it's back to reality. "I haven't got 2 pennies to rub together, and that's the way I like it. I find it easier to live off 42 pounds dole than a million." Dole means unemployment benefits. He couldn't get away from crime or criminals either. As his money was running out, some blackmailers slit the throats of 5 of his dogs and basically ran him out of town. But not before he paid them over $150,000. 1. A mortal loss. But we'll leave you with the story of all stories, even though we're not sure you can call it a curse. In Thailand, the lottery is serious business for many. It's a way out of poverty for some who don't have many options in life. People make merit at temples and pray for the winning numbers. Superstitious folks get exploited by seers who sell the right numbers. People see winning numbers in dreams, or if someone has, say, a strange-looking fruit growing in their garden, people will queue to pray to it and hope it gives them lottery luck. The numbers might even appear on the license plates of crashed vehicles. A ghost may even whisper the winning numbers in someone's ear. So yeah, it's serious alright. So serious that in 2018, a man called Jirawat Pongfan was absolutely delighted when he found out he had the winning numbers for the lottery and was about to collect $1.8 million. The 42-year-old threw a party and got really drunk, only to wake up and not be able to find his winning tickets. It's said he became very depressed after that and wasn't even able to work. He then shot himself in the head. His suicide note read, "I'm really sorry. Please don't bully my family. I did win the lottery prize." Apparently, the tickets were never found and no one claimed the prize. After hearing all this, we guess you're thinking you'd be totally different. Are we right? How would you deal with the cash explosion to ensure you didn't become yet another person cursed by a lottery win? Let us know in the comments. Also, be sure to check out
You've probably heard the saying, kids can be so cruel, which is usually in reference to schoolyard bullying. It might also relate to such things as young kids pulling the legs off of spiders. Psychologists tell us one of the reasons for such cruelty, especially against animals, is that children have not fully developed their sense of empathy. Sometimes they just don't understand the gravity of their actions. But then older kids should know better. Psychologists also tell us older kids that tend to be evil might have suffered from abusive relationships. They might also just be little psychopaths in the making, domineering devils with an antisocial attitude, and sometimes it seems there's no rational explanation why they are the way they are. Today we're going to introduce you to some of the worst children ever in this episode of the infographic show, The Most Evil Kids That Ever Lived. Number 10. Peter Woodcock. We'll start with the oldest kid on this list, who we admit could be said to have been almost an adult when he did his wicked deeds. He was 17 when he first started raping and killing young children in Toronto, Canada in the 1950s. Woodcock had a bad start in life. Like many kids on this list, he was put up for adoption by his 17-year-old mom, and then he was physically and sexually abused by his foster parents. He moved from home to home and was constantly bullied. At age 17, some say 16, he stalked young kids in Toronto. He molested and killed a boy of 9, another boy of 6, and also a girl of 4 in a short time span and was soon arrested. He did strange things to his victims, like biting them, or, with the girl, committing the rape partly with a tree branch. He defecated next to one of his victims' bodies and ritualistically sprinkled pennies or paper clips over the dead. He was found to be insane and was locked up in a psychiatric facility. There he underwent all kinds of strange therapies, including being given powerful LSD and locked in a dark room. Nothing worked. As an adult, he would kill again, and that's a very strange story for another time. He is so high on this list only because it's debatable if he was actually a kid when he did those evil things. Number 9. Brenda Ann Spencer. We could of course include numerous school shootings on this list, most of which happened in the USA for some reason. We won't start a gun debate here or mention the worst of those tragedies, that's a show in and of itself, but we will mention this 16-year-old girl only because of her utter lack of remorse. In 1979, she took a rifle to school. She shot 8 kids and a police officer, none of whom died. She also killed her school principal and a custodian. When asked why she did it, she replied, "I don't like Mondays. This livens up the day." She said it was a lot of fun, adding that the kids looked like a herd of cows standing around. It was really easy pickings. Before being imprisoned, she had lived in poverty with her alcoholic dad. It's been said she is psychotic and also depressed. She is still in prison today. Number 8. Edmund Kemper. Okay, so you probably know this guy already as one of the worst serial killers in history, a man who fits the description of the killer genius. Kemper certainly sounds quite clever in his numerous interviews that you can see on YouTube. He also looks scary at 6'9" and 300 pounds. We won't say too much as we may feature him in his own show, but we will tell you that at age 15, he shot and killed both of his grandparents. He was always a dark kid and not the only cat killer on this list. When asked why he killed his grandparents, he replied, "To see what it was like." He underwent many tests, and it was discovered that he had a high IQ and that he was a paranoid schizophrenic. He stayed in an institution for mentally ill convicts until he was 21. Was he cured? Definitely not. He would go on to do some very, very bad things. Number 7. The Unnamed Brit. This sounds like something from the opening scene of a horror movie. A 13-year-old boy walks into a police station holding a knife. He is covered in blood. Shocked police look on as the boy tells them he just killed his little brother. This happened in the UK in 2001. Police rushed to the house where they met the mother who knew nothing about what had happened. She'd been asleep on the sofa. They all dashed upstairs to find the 6-month-old baby dead in its crib. The baby had been stabbed 17 times and one of his hands was cut off. When interviewed by police, the boy said he knew what he was doing when he got a knife from the kitchen drawer, but he wasn't sure why he wanted to hurt his brother. He told police when they asked him why he did it, "I want to be with mom." The police report stated that the boy had obviously had his faculties together when he committed the crime, as it wasn't over quickly. The wound through the spine would have required a significant degree of force, even with a sharp-tipped knife, and he couldn't have severed the hand without looking, said the report. But the boy only got manslaughter due to his circumstances. His mother had severely neglected him, and she had been abused by her own mentally ill father. It said the boy had also been sexually abused by her parents. So it's not surprising that the court heard that the boy suffered from serious psychiatric problems and also had Asperger's syndrome. One of 3 psychologists that examined the boy said his existence was wretched. The question is, should we have any pity for him? Number 6. Mary Bell. Now for some more female evil. Belle made the headlines in the UK after she was convicted of strangling to death both a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old in 1968 in Newcastle, England. She may be on here with a double murder, but she perhaps gets more sympathy from the public because of her childhood. Her mom was a prostitute, and it later became known that Belle had suffered continually from sexual abuse from her own mom and from her mom's clients. It gets even worse. This mother from hell even tried to kill Mary on several occasions and made it look like an accident. One time she threw Mary out of a window, and another time overdosed her on sleeping pills. But Mary survived. She committed one murder at age 9 and another at age 10. On one victim, she had carved an M in his stomach. After the murders, Belle was sentenced and she got out of jail in 1980 when she was 23. This was too early for many Brits to stomach, and those devilish tabloids told the people where Belle was staying. Because of this, she had to go into protective custody lest the mob string her up from a lamppost. The plot thickened years later when Belle's 14-year-old daughter started receiving abuse, a girl who hadn't before then even known what her mom had done. The public was also angered that Belle made money from a book that was written about her. The author of the book said Belle was not a criminal, but a horribly damaged child. It also turned out that the British tabloids that were ostensibly furious about Belle getting some cash for the book had actually offered her more money for her story. Number 5. Joshua Phillips. This is the story of Joshua Phillips, a story you may have heard as it's been on TV plenty of times. Phillips bludgeoned his 8-year-old neighbor, Maddie Clifton, to death in 1998. Search parties went looking for the girl, and in the party was Phillips himself. But it was his mom who discovered the gruesome truth when she checked a waterbed that was leaking in one of the bedrooms. Stuffed inside the bed was the beaten body of Clifton. She had been beaten with a baseball bat, strangled, and repeatedly stabbed. Phillips was arrested while at school, and he admitted to the murders straight away. He was given life in prison without parole. Speaking of his crime, Phillips said, "I really don't know if I deserve to be released or not, but I know I want a second chance. Or maybe I deserve to die in prison." So, what drove him to this act of evil? Some people blame the father, who was a violent alcoholic who ruled over the household with an iron fist. The perpetrator now wants a second chance in life and has appealed his sentence. Many people in America think he should stay in prison for the rest of his life. Others say crimes such as this merit the death penalty, but there are people who believe some amount of leniency should be shown when it is a child that does the damage. The parents of the girl don't think so, and they once told the press, "We were raising our girls in a Christian home where we prayed every day." What we didn't know was that the devil himself had moved in right across the street. Number 4. Robert Thompson and John Venables. This is the crime that shook the UK in 1993, a crime that has never been forgotten and remains divisive among the public. The boys that committed the crime were just 10. If you are from the UK and old enough to remember, you will have seen closed-circuit TV footage of these 2 young boys taking a 2-year-old from a shopping mall. It later turned out that their first plan had been to abduct a child and then take him into the street and push him in front of a vehicle. But they didn't do that. Instead, they took the child on a journey, all the time hitting him and dropping him on his head. People even saw them with the child, but the boys told them the kid was their little brother. They then took him close to a railway line where they poured paint into the boy's eyes, stamped on him, threw stones at him, and even put batteries they had bought into the boy's orifices. They then killed him by dropping a heavy part of the railway line on his head. They left the boy on the track, and he was later cut in half when a train passed. As you can imagine, many of the British people wanted blood. The killers remained hidden, and the public was not allowed to know where they were kept. They were released in 2001, but still today, people debate what should have been done about this. Are kids that young wholly responsible, or should their somewhat abusive backgrounds be taken into consideration? As adults, the 2 men lived under different identities to protect themselves from street justice. Venables was later arrested numerous times for downloading and distributing child pornography. He is in prison right now for that crime. Robert Thompson, who the press say was the ringleader in the brutal crime, has not reoffended. It's believed he educated himself and is currently settled down in his This video was made possible by Wix. If you are ready to create a website, head over to wix.com/go/infographics to try out one of their premium plans right now. As you probably know, a wiki is a website which consists of collaborations of people modifying content. The most popular of these sites is none other than Wikipedia. It was launched on January 15, 2001 by Jimmy Wales and Larry Sanger. The former once said, "Imagine a world in which every single person on the planet is given free access to the sum of all human knowledge. That's what we're doing. And they did a good job. You can find 301 languages on Wikipedia, but the English language version is easily the biggest. Right now, in English, you can find 5.7 million articles and 46 million pages, which have been edited 860 million times and looked at by 1,203 admins. It's not surprising then that there's some weird stuff you can find on Wikipedia. And that's what we'll look at today, in this episode of the Infographic Show, the 10 scariest Wikipedia articles. Number 10, Ultimate Fate of the Universe. We'll start with this merry page that deals with destruction, the destruction of everything. It tells us that some cosmologists believe the universe will just keep expanding forever. The concept of infinity is hard to get our heads around, but so is the concept of absolute nothing. Nonetheless, there are theories regarding the end of the universe, and none of them sound very nice. We have something called the Big Rip. This is when dark energy gets stronger and gradually starts to pull everything apart. Galaxies move away from each other, space gets bigger, star systems get pulled apart, and you end up with a universe with nothing in it. Then you have the Big Crunch, which is space collapsing into a dimensionless singularity. In this scenario, the Big Bang happens, and then it's followed by the Big Crunch, and the cycle continues infinitely. Then you have the Big Bounce theory, which basically means that the Big Bang was the result of a previous universe collapsing, and so this one will collapse so another can be born. In any case, it's likely that the universe won't disappear during your lifetime, so you don't have to worry. That said, some of the things you're about to hear you probably should be worried about. Number 9, Project MK Ultra. Americans might feel a pang of fear if they head to this page, which tells us about their government conducting very unethical mind experiments on their own people. In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the CIA engaged in activities.
I'm here with Petty Officer John Davis to get to the bottom of a game that's been a staple of kitchen tables for a century. Battleship. You start by randomly firing shots and then work around your hits to sink ships.
You sunk my submarine.
Not this submarine.
No.
Amazon's got low prices on millions of items. Welcome, Cuddlebugs. Welcome, everyone.
Activities, often totally illegal, which used human guinea pigs to test if people's minds could be controlled. They gave some of these people LSD and other chemical concoctions, which was scary enough, but other times they just mentally and physically tortured people, isolated them, or tried to get into their heads using hypnosis. Sometimes these experiments happened in prisons, but they also took place in colleges, universities, and hospitals. It's quite unbelievable what they would try and make test subjects do after, say, a large dose of drugs or days of brainwashing tied to a chair. They try and make subjects age faster or slower, make them go out in public and disgrace themselves, cause them memory loss or brain damage, make them totally dependent on another person, mess up their eyesight and hearing, or